The Competitive Contractor podcast is brought to you by Shivendra & Co. Visit shivendra.com to find out how you can work with us to grow your construction business, be more profitable, and be a competitive contractor.
Hi everyone, it's Shivendra Kumar welcoming you to the Competitive Contractor podcast, a podcast for owners and leaders of construction companies globally. Shortage of resources, larger and more complex projects, while cost of materials rise, is keeping leaders of construction companies awake at night. The million-dollar question is it possible to do business and be successful in the current climate? Does the current climate promote successful, competitive, and profitable construction companies? And for the ultra-curious, visionary industry leaders listening to us today, what do you think the future construction companies would look like? To discuss this, amongst other topics, in the Competitive Contractor podcast today, I am delighted to have Pearce. Chris is the former president and CEO of Toll Global Logistics. He spent 16 years in various roles, including Divisional General Manager and General Manager at Toll. Chris now operates two businesses, EV20 Consulting Group and Jorson Technologies. He is also an advisor to executives of several large organizations.
Thank you, Shivendra, and it's really good to be here, mate.
Chris, it's great having you on this podcast today, and I'm glad that we finally got around to this recording. We're keen to know more about you and your career. So to start this podcast, do you mind sharing your story with us?
Sure. Well, I've been in a number of senior roles across a range of sectors, both in large manufacturing operations and large logistics operations for many multinational companies, including my last role at Toll, where I was the CEO president of the logistics arm of Toll, which I left in 2020. And in 2020, I started EV20. And I started EV20 with a vision and purpose to develop software that actually delivers excellence to multiple industries and is proudly developed and supported locally here in Australia. Now, we've gathered a team of people with a combined experience of over 400 years of programming skills, supported by a team of very talented senior operational personnel to ensure that when we design products, those products are designed in a real-world environment. So it's absolutely critical that people know when they use these tools, they're tools that have been used by people in the industry, not just by programmers.
So let's now talk about EV20 and DriveLinks, which is a pretty interesting name of a product. How did that come by, and what exciting solutions have you been working on for the construction industry?
Yeah, well, as COVID hit, it was a wonderful time for COVID to hit because we just started our business. So we were a new startup business. COVID hit. We needed our own management tool to ensure that we could build the business, develop products, and collaborate remotely during lockdown. We rapidly developed a project management tool that we use in our business, and surprisingly, we had a massive lift of efficiency, in some cases 30% increase in productivity by some of our team members through working remotely and using the tool. And that was really surprising to me because I've always been a bit of a cynic around the whole sort of working from home thing, and I am now one of the converted, so I was pleasantly surprised. In around October 2021, we developed a commercial version of the tool. It's called DriveLinks, and it targets initially the construction industry because it has a dire need for a mid-tier digital core solution. And so far we've had some pretty good success.
That's great. The 30% increase in capacity of the teams, that's phenomenal. I think where the construction industry and many businesses are at this point in time, they're all looking for capacity. And what you're saying is that you can get 30% more capacity from your existing teams, which is phenomenal. I'd be happy even if I got half of it.
I think if you have a tool that ensures that you are tracking people's time, you know what your people are doing, your people are no longer spending 2 hours in a car in traffic each way, it's a win-win situation. Everybody wins, it really is. And even simple things such as, size of offices. Do you need the size of office that we used to have moving forward? We probably don't, So in fact, we are actually going through and looking to reduce the size of our office by 50%. So there's a lot of benefits with the right tools in working remotely.
Yeah, no, that's as I said, that's fantastic. So that brings me to the current hot topics in the construction industry: shortage of resources, larger and more complex projects, and the news this week featured multiple articles on the cost of material rising. And all of these keep the leaders of the construction industry awake at night. It's the conversation, it's the topic that everyone talks about. The big question for you is it possible to do business currently and still be successful?
So that's a really good question. I think it's difficult and at times not viable for many organisations. Hence why we've seen a lot of contractors become insolvent recently. They're being asked to lock in prices of material, and we know that materials are going through the roof, and they're being asked to manage the risk of shutdowns. And again, both of those things are generally out of a control sphere of influence. So it's really unfair for them, and I think a lot of them are doing it very, very tough. Two recent examples include ProBuild, which went under owing, I think it was $14 million, and of course Grocon, they went under owing about $100 million. So it's tough out there. But I do think that what organisations can control is their operational efficiency and the capacity to free up cash flow and to make better use of resources. This is where products such as Drive Links comes in. Project resourcing, planning and management, those are jobs that need to be supported by technologies. Process and controls that enable them to be delivered more efficiently with the least amount of administration tasks and have the information on hand quickly to make informed decisions.
Yep, I like the approach. It's basically saying that we apply the skills of our skilled people where it's needed most. We're not having them shift pieces of paper around and spend time entering data that could have been entered somewhere else in the work stream, I guess, right? So it's a good approach. And I know it's tough doing business. You mentioned names of the two businesses, but there's many more who have struggled. And I often wonder whether decisions or investments they made earlier on were correct, particularly in terms of the approach they took to drive efficiency improvement, which is a word that doesn't get used in construction a lot. Right? So that brings me to the next point, which is, there's always room for improvement, right? And I think with the challenges you mentioned, the examples of companies you've spoken, the dollar values that you've just mentioned, this is the time for the construction industry to become more efficient and productive. And the challenge, I think, for a lot of the business owners and business leaders in the industry is that they cannot see the improvement opportunities, right? Because that's sort of, when you're doing the work a particular way, that sort of becomes the way you do it, and you know no other way. So you've had the luxury of having worked in a very cutthroat industry, supply chain, right? Where you got to deliver something on time, you got to deliver it on cost, and the cost and I think the margins are paper thin. Mm. So as someone who's got exposure in a very competitive cutthroat industry, which is very different to construction, when you look at the construction industry, Chris, where do you see the inefficiencies in businesses?
Yeah. Firstly, I agree with everything you just said. It's logistics is a really tough industry, and you're literally talking about cents in the dollar, and if you get something wrong, anything wrong, you can go from being a profitable organisation to being in a lot of trouble very, very quickly. So I think from what I've seen in the construction industry, there are a lot of manual processes that are being carried out by very expensive resources such as project managers, and that really takes them away from the critical task of managing the overall project. Paper-based processes that, as you said earlier, it requires a huge amount of administrative data entry. On some major projects, that I've seen since working in and around construction, you can have up to 8 site administrators just simply helping people complete timesheets or managing logins or managing time off, such as leave. It's crazy. Of course, idle period for project resources, or worse, time theft. That's where people are simply standing around and they're waiting for a delivery of timber, of materials, of tools, or whatever the case may be. And whilst they're standing around waiting, they're still charging their time. I mean, that's incredibly expensive. And of course, so many small businesses use multiple software platforms that simply don't talk to each other. So the ability for, somebody to create a picture or give an update in terms of where a particular project is, it's actually really, really difficult and can take a really long time. So again, people are not making quick, informed decisions on the run because they simply don't have that information at hand. And, interestingly, there are very, very few cost-effective core solutions in the Australian market that can be modified quickly, cheaply, and effectively locally. Because we all know that every business will have certain processes that are unique to that particular business. And this is where we're quite different. We have all of our programmers on the ground here. We have our operational specialists that can quickly draw out specs, and we can build, if you like, bespoke solutions to an extent for different businesses. And simply, there is nobody else out there in the market that can do that. I think the other thing, that our tool does help with is the onboarding of new staff. The tool itself makes that process a lot easier. It gives a lot more visibility around the skill set available to you, and of course, making sure that they've got all the right qualifications to do the job safely. Interestingly, the construction industry is the second most hard hit industry for labour shortages, and that puts a lot of pressure on existing project managers to stick to their timelines and, of course, hit the KPIs with the limited staff that they have. Logistics has exactly the same issue, and on top of that, continued variability in demand or volume. Logistics have become really, really good at using technology to manage that variability, and I think there's a real learning point here for the construction industry. With some of our new customers that we've brought on in recent time, we've seen an increase in 30% of certain companies' capacity due to the automation of paper-based processes. So that's people simply moving bits of paper across a desk. And those improvements are evident very early on in the implementation stage, because people realise that you're just simply not doing the same task 2 or 3 times. And then, of course, you've got to marry all of those processes together to create a total picture. So using products such as Drive that helps automate all of those processes and give a complete picture in terms of the status or completion of projects and tasks.
Yeah. Thanks for those insights. And for the listeners, I'll just try and recap what you've said in terms of the improvement opportunities, because this information is gold for particularly the small to medium-sized contractors. If you're looking for efficiency improvements for the finance managers, financial controllers, CFOs, this is going to be good for you. So I think the first one you mentioned, Chris, was the manual processes. And the manual process is done by, you correctly said, I think the high-paid individuals when they do the admin tasks that could have been done by somebody else. I think the paper-based processes which you talked about is massive. And yes, as projects scale up, there's a lot of people that get hired just to work on the papers. And it's not timesheets, it's the safety documentation and the like, right? So there's many. Yeah. The idle time, I see that a lot. And I think that's a good place where a system or a technology tool comes in, because those things become visible. It's hard to track time theft or resource wastage just purely on paper, because you end up looking at it day by day, because these numbers become significant, I guess, when you start looking at a monthly or an annual level to say, hey, you know what, 30% utilization at an annual means that I paid 30% or whatever that amount works out in terms of dollars. That much money was paid for someone not doing any work for that duration. So it becomes significant dollars, and you multiply that by the size of your workforce. Software solutions that don't talk to each other, classic, You got the financial systems, you might have Xero, MYOB, QuickBooks. They don't talk to your project management software, or they might not talk to any other system, or maybe sometimes even if it's Excel files or paper-based documents, they don't talk to each other. And I see that the strong supporter of made in Australia coming out of you when you talked about the solutions being Australian made. And I think that's a challenge for businesses. Businesses that want to embrace technology, they're reluctant to because it's not affordable right now. The final bit which I think came around to was the onboarding, and that's I love that point. So I made a note of it. Often we bring on staff, and it takes them about 2 to 3 weeks before they fully get onboarded and are ready to work for the business. Just I'm imagining the situation where they can be inducted, they can be given all the information in day 1, day 2, and day 3 they're giving value back to the business. Just imagine the saving that comes out. So cutting 2 weeks off maybe 10 hires you've made, that's about 20 weeks of savings you've created. So
I think the important piece here is you actually don't miss a step as well. So if you are onboarding people and there is a process, nothing slips through the cracks. So there's compliance, but there's also a safety factor for organisations that ensure that they are following the rules and regulations around onboarding people.
Yeah,
and they're not facing some sort of legal action, down the track in many years' time. So I think there are a huge amount of benefits there.
Yeah, that's a good one, Chris. I think for I know compliance, or safety, quality, and just the governance that comes with some of the tougher contracts some of the construction companies are working on. That's really good you mentioned that, because it's the fear of something going wrong that keeps the construction managers, directors awake at night. But to know that there's a system that won't allow mistakes like this to happen, I think that's phenomenal, right? Like that just gives you that peace of mind knowing that, hey, Jack or John or Sarah, whoever's going to be coming to work, they have all the necessary accreditations. I don't have to go manually verify it. The system takes care of it. Or the work won't be completed, won't be submitted, or won't be started if the 5 questions haven't been answered, or we might not get a contractor coming on if they don't have the necessary qualifications. So I think that's a big one as well, and an improvement that technology, I guess, brings. And in manual processes, you're right. Those things can be skipped because the safety manager might be on annual leave, or the quality manager might have left, and there's a vacuum created in trying to backfill. But the system is there for you 24/7, right?
Correct. Yeah, 100% right. Yep.
So on this note, I'm keen to get your response on this question, right? So we're recording this podcast in 2022, about the middle of 2022. But fast forward, let's fast forward to 2025. What do you think successful construction companies would look like? And I'm not talking just ordinary construction companies. I'm talking about profitable construction companies. And how do you think, like, what would be the feel? Like, how would we feel doing business with those successful and profitable construction companies in 2025?
I think there'll be some macro improvements. And the one that I'll talk a bit about is culture, the culture within the industry. So I think you'll find that many organisations for a long time now have, they proudly show, as we do here, the values of our organisation. And those values really underpin the way we work together and the way we work with the community. And, I think you'll find that, the value set, the culture within the industry will change over time. I think there'll be a significant pricing and procurement overhaul. So, we talked before about, contractors being held accountable for the price of timber or steel or whatever the case may be. I think that needs to change. I really don't think we've got the right balance in the industry. It shouldn't be up to just the builders or the construction companies to actually take all of that risk. I think it's unfair. I think there'll be an increase in apprenticeships and training within the industry. And I think, there'll be, I think the industry will be more prepared for seasonal or cyclic factors such as we've seen, in COVID. And now in the new post-pandemic, I think working conditions will improve because there will be a gradual increase in the amount of immigrants, which will provide a solution to labour shortages within the industry. Construction companies that are embracing technology will be better placed to remove some of those manual tasks that we talked about, and non-value added tasks, if you like. Companies will invest more in the right people to help drive some of these changes, to ensure that they have that technology knowledge base within the organisation. I think people will start to think outside of the box when it comes to procurement and mobilising project resources. I think that you'll see proper and prudent planning and job control underpinned again by core technology to support this. And, of course, promote efficiency within the industry, more KPIs, more updates, live updates in terms of where projects are at, and then the ability to sort of turn the rudder if you're heading in the wrong direction quickly is going to see the whole industry turn around from an efficiency perspective. I think, as a result, companies that are digitally proficient, for want of a better word, will be highly desirable for their transparency, so the ability to get information quickly, and their reporting capabilities, that enable them to make informed decisions dynamically, quickly, on the run, but with the right up-to-date information. Because I think, companies that continue to have all of these disparate systems and all of these paper-based processes, they're just not making decisions quickly enough, and in many cases, they're not making the right decisions. So I think you'll see significant change.
Yeah, that's I think the way you explained that makes sense. I think it aligns with the different trends I've seen. I'm going to go back to your experience in the supply chain part, and I know from the limited experience I had with some supply chain responsibilities I held in my career earlier on. The market or the customers are very demanding. The customers are pretty strict, right? Like in terms of what they're expecting of ruthless. So the question is, could it be is it the case that in construction there's sort of not that ruthlessness is missing in the construction industry in terms of the customer perception, or do you think that's the case? It's just that the industry has over time just become comfortable with what's being offered. That supply chain has the supply and demand of in terms of how business gets done. We've sort of accepted the diluted version of it, and the potential is untapped. And for where I'm headed is to say, could the customers be more demanding in the construction industry to push for that vision that you've just shared with us?
I think it will. I think that the industry will continue to mature. If you think about it, up until what we've seen in recent times, things that are totally out of the hands of the industry as a whole, out of the construction companies, the customers, mom and dad building their house, who should take the risk in terms of, delays because of, the rising cost of timber or steel or cement, who should actually take that? And I think it's given the industry a real shake-up. Mm-hmm. And I think because it's given the industry a shake-up, I think that it will mature, and it will mature really, really quickly. I think there'll be a change in terms of who takes some of the risks moving forward, certainly around procurement and material. And I think that customers will become far more demanding than they've ever been before. So your ability to manage all of those changes and do it in a really efficient, effective way, technology will become the way of the future in the construction industry. Of that, I've got no doubt. I think there'll be more KPIs. I think there'll be more regular updates in terms of where projects sit, and you simply can't do that without the right technology. It simply doesn't exist. So, yeah, I agree. I think it's going to change. It's going to change pretty rapidly.
Yeah. I think like one of the things I'm imagining is that by the time my kids grow up, they might be ordering a house out of Amazon, right? So it could be 3D printed and delivered into a piece of land they might have just purchased. Let alone, I don't know if houses and that sort of concept will exist by then, or people would just be moving through Uber homes or something. But I'll leave that for another conversation you and I can have maybe after hours.
Yeah.
You talked about the culture, you talked about a little bit about the community, and I know that EV20, from the conversations I've had with you and your team, they partnered up with an indigenous civil company as well, and they're doing some good work in that space. Could you talk about that partnership and why it's so important to EV20? I was really touched by what you guys are doing, so I think I thought I'll ask that question and share some of the good work you guys are doing.
Sure. So EV20 partnered with an Indigenous civil group, RNC Civil, to develop an operations management software solution that will lead to the next generation of Indigenous construction providers here in Australia. It's an interesting one for us because RNC consults, designs, and delivers on projects. This means they're involved in the whole end-to-end part of the projects, working with the community, with the Aboriginal community, as well as the government funders who most of the time provide the funding for the construction works, and of course all the other delivery partners. And when you think about it, that's quite different from most construction companies that go through a competitive tender process for packages of work. So these guys are involved right at the start, right through to the end. And it's a perfect fit for us as an organisation because we like to think that we're a values-based organisation. And certainly speaking to the management team at RNC Civil, we think we're actually quite similar in very, very many ways. The style, their focus on the community, their focus on their employees. And, two of the values that I want to talk about very quickly is, one is called Bridging the Gap. So RNC talk about Bridging the Gap, which effectively that is for equity in business, regardless of status or race. And I think it's an outstanding value to have. And of course, lift up and give back. And that talks about providing an opportunity for skills development to the Indigenous communities to ensure greater independence in their living and working lives. And I think it's really admirable. Drive Links helps both of those values. If we think for a minute about bridging the gap, by linking projects, people and processes via tasks through their own service portal, the automated tender process, scheduling and template features allow for subcontracts to access equal opportunity, either to meet the tender requirements or to provide availability and capability of different parcels of work. And of course, Drive also helps to lift up and give back by taking a gradual approach to using digital technology. Subcontractors learn to use the software firstly as project resources under RNC projects, but to eventually running their own Drive Links accounts at a very reasonable cost, all via one log-on and multiple accounts.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you're almost building a community around the network that RNC Civil has, and that's really good. So I'm keen to see how that project pans out. So keep me posted. As we conclude this podcast, Chris, what does the next few years look like for Drive Links? In other words, I'm saying, what's going to keep you busy the next few years?
Yeah. There's lots keeping us busy. It's a fun place to be. But our company vision is to inspire and foster visionary leaders' minds to collectively deliver smart global software solutions. So too, our next version of Drive Links is the concept of a community hub, a shared resource platform for multiple Drive Links accounts. Industries such as utilities, logistics, the resource sector have already adopted shared platforms to share their services. And we see that every day in fast food. Fast food uses shares platform to ensure that, we can all get our urge for, sort of takeaway food. Now, imagine if you could select from a labour pool of talent to allocate tasks within your projects within one shared platform. That platform would be Drive Links. In a highly regulated market, it seems impossible. However, digital platforms allow for rigid processes to make possible a future marketplace for labour delivery. And we've already talked about how technology is helping in the compliance world because it is able to do that. It's able to do that really, really efficiently and quickly. I think in today's ever-changing world, digital proficiency is a given. Having information on hand and the ability to share that information quickly, either to your customers, to your employees, or to your contract, is absolutely critical in being competitive moving forward. And what I'd say to you is people will adapt or simply be left behind.
Yeah, they said that the future belongs to those who connect the dots. And I think I can understand the links part of Drive Links. What you just explained is just linking different parts of the construction ecosystem or any business ecosystem for that matter, right, together. And that's phenomenal. I would love to be part of something like that, where you have this sense of community, where you're helping each other, but you're also ensuring that we all succeed together. And if we are at the end of it, any business, any individual, we cannot survive the way the society is structured. I guess we cannot survive on our own. We need the whole society to support us grow our businesses and us as individuals, us as families. So I think that's really powerful. Like I was just thinking through the potential of what you talked about. So that's massive. So yeah, we wish you the best with that. In terms of more information about Drive Links and about EV20, where can people get more information about you and the business and some of the topics we've discussed today?
Well, Shivendra, if this podcast has been of interest to any of your viewers, and you think that Drive Links would be a good fit for your business, please ask your viewers to get hold of yourself, and you can organise a demo through our team. It'll be a 30-minute demo. And we'll introduce you to what Drive Links can actually do to your business, and hopefully show you the value of a tool such as Drive Links.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And to the listeners, if you wanted to get in touch with and understand more about the Drive Links product, of course, connect with me, and I'll be more than happy to show you how powerful this particular application is. And it's something that I'm beginning to love, and I'm sure once you have a look at it, you'll enjoy the experience as well. Yeah, and that brings us to the end of this podcast. Chris, it's been great meeting you today. Your team's been fantastic in helping us put this together. So thank you to you and your team. It's your insights and support like this that helps many construction business owners and leaders grow their business and become a competitive contractor. Chris, to you and your team, thank you once again.
Thank you, Shivendra. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.